Whenever we're in Hyrule, we're always so busy collecting Triforce pieces and trying to defeat Ganon that we never take the time to see what types of bourbon the kingdom has to offer. But let's face it, no matter how many times you defeat Ganon, he always keeps coming back. So this playthrough, we've decided to take our time and focus on bourbon collecting instead. Zelda's just gonna have to wait. In the last episode, when we got to the Triforce chamber at the end of the first dungeon, Chonk here foolishly chose this bottle of Four Roses Small Batch Select and left the dungeon without collecting the Triforce fragment. Now it may no longer even be possible to unite the Triforce of Wisdom and defeat Ganon. Does this mean Hyrule is lost? Is Princess Zelda doomed? Who cares? We're bourbon hunting now. Back out into the Overworld, eh, Chonk? You know, this Four Roses Small Batch Select is definitely good, but for some reason I just can't quite get over the line to loving it. On paper, it seems like I should really be into this. It's got a nice articulation of flavors. There's some caramel, there's butterscotch, a little chocolate cookie, a sprig of mint, some herbal rye, a dash of maple, a little pepper. I still think I just like the single barrel Four Roses better. I do kind of hope it'll grow on me, though. So, Chonk, I need to point out that you should avoid spending all your rupees on bourbon. We do need to save at least some money for equipment upgrades. Well, for starters, you're going to want to upgrade that shield. You need to be able to block fireballs and other dangerous projectiles, so you're going to need more protection than that little dinky one can provide. You shouldn't have trouble finding a better one, though. I think most shops around here have shields for sale. My point is, just don't spend all our money on whiskey. Hey, secret entrance.
You should go see what's inside.
Hey, we found the Master Distiller's wife. That's cool.
Ooh, that's not good. Geez, that's awful.
Chonk! That woman was pouring out her heart to you, and you just walked out in the middle of her story. That seems awfully rude. I guess to escape Ganon's tyranny, she feels like she has to go into hiding and live in a hole underneath a shrub? That's sad. So, if her husband's the Master Distiller, do we have any idea where Hyrule Distillery is on the map? I'm guessing it's probably in the Highlands somewhere? Well, I just always assumed the best place for a distillery would be in the Highlands. I mean, most of Scotland's distilleries are in the Highlands, right? Even Speyside, with their high concentration of distilleries, is technically still in the Highlands. I mean, you could build a distillery in the Lowlands, I suppose. But if your kingdom is going to have only one main distillery, it really ought to be in the Highlands. The Lowlands are just going to be too flat and open. You need all that mountainous, rugged terrain to give you a bunch of spots to hide from tax collectors. After all, isn't whiskey making almost as much about tax evasion as it is about anything else?
Tax collectors inspire distillers to innovate and come up with new and creative ideas, to avoid paying taxes, of course. I'm not sure what Ganon's tax policy is regarding whiskey production, but given that he's abducted the kingdom's master distiller, I can't imagine it's very good. Hey, there's another cave you can check out up there.
Looks like it's another shop, and this guy does have a shield for sale, but I'd hold off on it. I'm certain you can find a better price than this at a different shop. Oh, okay. I guess we're buying more bourbon then. Elijah Craig's small batch, is it? Well, select your whiskey glass and the new bottle from the whiskey submenu and we'll have a taste. Here we have the first bourbon we found since exiting level 1, which is this bottle of Elijah Craig Small Batch. Like the first bourbon we bought, which was Evan Williams' Black Label, this one's also made by Heaven Hill Distillery. This particular expression takes its name from a man who lived in the late 1700s, one who is credited by many as being the father of bourbon. He was given this title because he was supposedly the first one to age his whiskey in new charred oak barrels, which is one of bourbon's key distinctive attributes. However, the story of how he arrived at this discovery lives more in the realm of legend than history from what I can tell. Some say his barrels were first charred by an accidental fire. Okay, that might be possible. Others say he stored his whiskey in former sugar barrels and liked how the charring improved its flavor. That explanation I'm less sure about. The connection between charring and sugar barrels is unclear to me. Sure, barrels were used to store sugar, but I don't know why sugar barrels would need to be charred. So I prefer the first explanation, accidental fire. But what could have been the circumstances of this accidental fire that supposedly charred the first bourbon barrels? Well, there isn't any clear historical data about this that I can find, so the only responsible thing for me to do would be to fill in the gaps with my imagination. So let's speculate. It wouldn't have been a fire involving barrels already filled with whiskey. That charring would have only affected the outside of the barrel, and it's the char layer on the inside that impacts flavor. And if the fire was so great as to burn from the outside of the barrel all the way through to the inside, it would have reached the whiskey as well, which would have ignited and burned the entire structure down. After all, warehouses of maturing whiskey burning right to the ground isn't exactly all that uncommon, so the accidental fire wouldn't have involved barrels with maturing whiskey already inside. So what other possibilities are there? I can think of two. The first possibility is, perhaps Elijah Craig saw a lightning strike near his home and went outside to investigate. From his backyard, he saw that the bolt of lightning had struck a giant oak tree on a nearby hill. As he walked towards the tree, he noticed a strange occurrence. The lightning had blasted one single oak stave out of the tree, which was now lying on the ground. The curious thing about this stave is that, even though it was clearly burning, the stave was not consumed by the fire. As he moved closer to try and understand what he was seeing, a booming voice came from the stave. "Elijah, you are the one destined to begin the tradition of charring oak barrels before filling them with whiskey. And when it's mature, everyone will love the sweet, sweet taste, and future generations will be forever grateful." And ever since this encounter, Elijah Craig began charring his new oak barrels before filling them. The second possibility I can think of is that this was some sort of barrel toasting gone wrong. From what I understand, the tradition of barrel toasting, as opposed to charring, had been around long before Elijah Craig, so perhaps he was in the process of toasting one of his whiskey barrels, perhaps with a few whiskeys already under his belt, and he either turned the fire up too high, or else fell asleep, or passed out, during the toasting, like when you have something in the oven and forget to set a timer. So when he was awakened by the smoke billowing out of the now over-toasted barrels, Elijah was brought to his senses. To his dismay, he discovered that instead of being toasted, the inside of his new whiskey barrel was completely charred. But whiskey barrels are expensive, so he didn't want to absorb the cost of making a whole new replacement barrel, and he didn't want to attempt the laborious task of scraping the inner charred layer off, so he just decided to fill the barrel and see what would happen. That explanation I can wrap my head around, more so than the first option, in which Elijah Craig was inspired to char his barrels in response to some sort of theophany. But are either of these actually what happened? I have no idea, and no one else seems to either. So we're left to fill in the blanks. In any case, whether true or not, the claim is that Elijah Craig was the first to age his whiskey in new charred oak barrels. And like I said, since this is one of the key components in making a whiskey bourbon, he has been dubbed ever since the father of bourbon. However, it wasn't until much later that Elijah Craig became an actual brand. The first bottles of Elijah Craig Small Batch weren't actually released until the mid-1980s. As I understand it, producer Heaven Hill was gambling that a premium product would be successful in a time when the bourbon market was in a bit of a slump. From its inception, Elijah Craig had always been a 12-year-old bourbon, but in 2016 it finally lost its age statement when the expression's popularity was peaking, and Heaven Hill wanted to increase the output without being handcuffed by the troublesome 12-year wait for barrels to reach maturity. I've read that this is now a blend of 8 to 12-year-old bourbons. Maybe. But that isn't stated anywhere in the label, so I guess we'll just have to take their word for it. Well, Wild Turkey Rare Breed is also supposedly a blend of bourbons 8 to 12 years old, and it hangs on to its good reputation, so I'll try not to be bitter about it. Let's just judge it based on how it tastes. Well, it's sweet, of course. And there's a little sourness, too. Some bananas, some toast. A little brown sugar, cinnamon, rhubarb. It's a little hot on the attack, but not bad for 47% alcohol. When they lowered the age of this bourbon, at least they didn't lower the proof as well. It has a nice sweet and savory kind of meaty quality to it that I don't always find in my bourbons. It's slightly buttery, with a little flour, caramel, and sour cherry. This is a pretty tasty bourbon, actually. And even though I'm sour that it's no longer 12 years old, I can't pretend not to enjoy it. Part of me still wishes they'd put some age statement back on this thing, though, even if it ends up being less than 12. I mean, it's probably unrealistic to expect a 12-year-old bourbon at this price in this moment in time. Knob Creek, which I would consider its most direct competitor, has only a 9-year age statement. So, if this were to go back up to being a 12-year-old product, I assume they'd have to jack up the price as well. But could they put a lower age statement on this, even if it's just 9 or 10? I wonder if the humiliation of putting a younger age statement on the bottle keeps them from doing this. I mean, after being fully 12 years old for the first 3 decades of its existence, it would be pretty humbling to go back to being only a 9 or 10. In any case, it remains a tasty, affordably priced bourbon, so I can't be too upset about that. I'm going to give this 3 stars and 2 legs. Alright, Chonk, let's get back out into Hyrule. Here we go!